Hello and welcome back to Retfurb. So on today's video I've got this Sony PS1 which I'm going to be showing the PSIO modification, which you can load games onto an SD card and then they go into the back of the PSIO and then you can play them directly from the PlayStation's parallel port, which it pushes into there. So nice and easy. That's the easy part, unfortunately. So with this, although that part of it's a fairly easy process, it's a bit more involved to get it to work with inside the console. You've got to solder a chip inside which will allow this to then be read and played. So it's an optical drive emulator basically, which once the games are put onto the SD card, they then load directly from that. Once the modification inside's done, it's nice and easy really. So I'm going to be showing the process of putting the chip inside. Now this PlayStation 1 I've already done a video on previously, which I put the mod chip in so you can play burnt discs from the drive. You can still do this modification with that in there, so you can keep the original mod chip in there and then this other chip gets soldered in a different location, which then allows you to then use this to play games directly from that. Also, I'm not going to show the process of where to get the games from, but obviously you should own the games already before you load them on here. Whether you do or not, that's another thing. I've actually got another video that I'm going to be doing as well for Sega Saturn, which when compared to the process on this one is a lot easier. It's basically a cartridge which goes in the back of the Sega Saturn and it's pretty much plug and play. It's so much easier. This one's a little bit more involved. So let's get straight into it and I'll show you how it's done. Getting straight into it then, this is the PSIO in the package, exactly how it came to me. Now I purchased this one from Aliexpress and I'll put the link in the description for the item I purchased. If it's not available, I'll put the similar one in the description. So this is the little chip and you can see it's marked out for various parts on it and you can see it says PSIO switchboard. So this needs to be fitted into the PS1 to get it to work, and it came with some small cable which can be soldered in, and this is the actual PSIO itself. So you can see here, made in China, Mosul, I think it says on it. Not exactly sure what that means, but that's the slot there for the card to go in. And that's the easy part, basically. The hard part is obviously to solder that chip in, and that is the parallel port that I'm just pointing to. And this is on a PAL PlayStation. You can see the model type SCPH5552. Now, I'm pretty sure it's compatible with other ones, but this is one of the compatible models. So this is the small port that needs to be opened, and then that PSIO can then be pushed into it. And then once obviously the chip's done, the easy part is then to put the games onto the SD card. There's also some firmware that needs to go on there. So the supplier where you get the PSIO from should have a link, or it should already be installed on an SD card if it comes with it. Now this one, I think I purchased it with an SD card. I can't remember if I did or not, but it was fairly easy. And now I'm just showing a diagram that I've got that I've printed offline, which I'll also put a link in the description to that, which was handy. It was a good reference guide just to know where to solder on the board. It was a handy little reference. There's a website that's got a few diagrams like this which show for the various versions of the PS1. So I printed off the one obviously for this version. Other ones are very similar, but there are some differences in them, so you need to make sure you print the correct one. So now you can see I'm just opening up the PS1, just removing the disc reader part of the PS1, and then we can get in and start unscrewing the cover off of the main circuit board and then remove the circuit board. This is a fairly easy process, as you can see. I think there's probably, I don't know, 3 ribbon cables to remove and then 5 screws roughly, so it's pretty easy. You can see I get it out pretty quickly. Obviously I've sped this up. So like I was saying earlier in the video, with the PSIO, this is the most trickiest part to do on the PlayStation modification, but once it's done, it's well worth it. It's, you know, you instead of using an emulation on a PC or buying the PS1 portable, you know, the small remake classic that they made, which is an emulation basically of the PS1. It's not original hardware. At least with this, you're still using the original hardware. You're still using the original controllers, so it's a lot more of an authentic feel to it. The menu that loads up is obviously slightly different, but yeah, it's still authentic hardware. So you can see here, this has actually had an MM3 chip done on it previously, which you can do. It doesn't affect the fitting of this PSIO. It can still be fitted with that chip in place, which is ideal, because if you do want to run discs on it, which are on not original discs, you can still do that. You might not be able to put it on the PSIO for any reason. I mean, I've not had an issue of any compatibility on it. It's been really good, to be fair, but you may come across some sort of issue that you need to use it. And I've got that video on YouTube on one of my other videos showing the process for the mod chip, which then allows you to play backup discs, so you can view that if you need to as well. So now I'm just getting into locating where to put the chip, which I've stuck down now with a bit of double-sided tape in the location where it's not going to get in the way. And now I'm just getting the wires ready, and then I'm going to solder them in place, just checking the length, making sure I've got enough cable on there before I obviously cut it. And yeah, then it's just a case of finding the correct position, looking at the diagram to cross-reference you're in the right point, and then soldering it to the correct point on the chip. So I'm just prepping the chip with a bit of solder, just using my Milwaukee cordless soldering iron, which I use on all my videos doing soldering. It's not the most detailed of soldering irons, but it does the job, and I've done some pretty small stuff with it, so it's pretty handy, to be honest. So now I'm just going to go through the soldering process on all the wires, which is the same process for each one of them, just checking the wire length, checking the correct location, cutting it, prepping the end of the wires, and then soldering it on. So nothing too hard, really. You know, if you've got basic soldering skills, this should be well within the ability to do this. Yeah, it's not too bad at all, really. So just going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video also about the Sega Saturn, I've also got that video to do soon. At the time that you watch this, I may have already put it on, but when I put this on there first, the Sega Saturn one will be coming next after this video, and that one is the Sega Saru, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is basically a cartridge that goes in back of the expansion. Normally you'd have on the Sega Saturn, I think it was like expansion for like a extra RAM or something like that, I think, at the back, whereas this goes in there, and with the Sega Saturn it also provides that extra RAM, depending on which model you buy. And then all you do is put a small SD card in there loaded with the games, and yeah, it's so much easier. But I'm going to be doing a separate video just showing exactly what's involved with that. Obviously the PlayStation 1 and the Sega Saturn were competitors back in the day. I personally had a PS1, I didn't have a Saturn. I do have a Saturn now because I collect Sega stuff, but I didn't actually have one back in the day. I had a PS1, and then I had a PS2, PS3. I sort of went into PlayStation after Sega, and the PS1's definitely one of my favourite consoles ever made. It was like a massive jump from like the Mega Drive back in the day. So now just going back to what I'm doing, I'm pointing out here there's a small part of the board that needs cutting. Now you need to be very careful when you're doing these parts, because when you cut those lines, you know, if you cut the wrong bit, you'll mess it up and it won't work at all. So yeah, you might be able to, you know, rectify that by bridging a connection, but just make sure you do break the right point and don't go in and break the wrong point, because then you'll have issues with it. So just check the diagram and make sure that, you know, you are doing the right one. But it's, you know, once you've got the right one, it's just a simple case of breaking that wire. So just carrying on doing the soldering, as you can see, just working through. I'm not sure how many connections there are on it. I think there's roughly about 10 connections, and they're all exactly the same process, really. Some are a little bit harder than others, just depending on the point on the circuit board, but most of them are pretty, you know, pretty easy. Just make sure that when you do solder them on, you're not soldering over 2 points by accident. And then there's another trace that just needs to be broken. Again, just being very careful not to break the wrong one. So that's basically the process all done now, and we can look at getting that fitted back in. So it's just a simple case of the reversal of what we did to get it out. Now once this part's done, this is the main, hardest part of it that I keep saying. Once it's done, it's pretty easy from here on out. So I'm going to be showing shortly the folder that you'll have on the SD card, which needs to be prepped with a menu system file, and then you need to put the games in the folders. So as soon as this is screwed in, I'll get into that and we'll just show a demonstration of the folder that you'll see. This is the folder that you'll have when you plug it into the computer. So you can see there's a list of games there. Obviously it doesn't matter what games you've got on there, but you can see at the bottom there's a menu.sys. Now that's the main one. You need to get this working. So whoever you get this from, this PSIO, they should be able to link you to the correct menu.sys file that you need. Once you've got that on there, then you load the games on, plug it in, and that's it. It's simple. It can't be any more simple than that, to be honest. Now I'm going to load straight into the PSIO, so it's loaded up. This is real time, so this is how quick it is to load up. So you can see that you're met with the PSI logo, then a PSIO loading screen, and then you can see the games menu. This is where all your games will be kept, and then this is the menu system options. So I'll just briefly show these. There's various things you can do in here to change settings, different logo pop-ups when you load the game, different like background music. I'm not going to go into each of them in detail, but you can see there's quite a lot of stuff on here. If you look online, you'll be able to find out the reasons for different things and what you need to do if there's any issues and any adjustments that need doing. And then when you come out of it, you can just save that, and then it will be all saved for the next time you go into the PSIO. Now going back to the games, we'll just load up a quick game now. So I'm just going to load up Brian Lara Cricket. So again, I'm going to do this in real time just to show how quick it is to load it up, just to compare it to other sort of disk emulation or emulations, and you can see it loads up really quick. It's no issues here. There's no sort of errors on this game. Like I said earlier, every game that I've tried so far, as long as it's a PAL game, it loads up absolutely fine. If you try putting in an NTSC game on a PAL TV, you'll get color issues. So I've got a PAL system, PAL TV, so this is what I'm loading up now. I'm just going to load into the game just quickly, just show it a little bit further going into it. So back in the day I played quite a lot of Brian Lara Cricket, but not actually on the PS1. I actually played it on the Mega Drive more than I think. Me and my mate played that for hours. So again, this is real time loading. And you can see it's loaded into the game absolutely fine, no issues. So now just resetting the console and going back into the PSIO main menu, I'm just going to go in and load another game up just to show that working again with no issues at all. Again, all in real time loading. So obviously this is the end of the video. It's all gone okay. If you do get any issues with it, you just need to check over all your electrical connections that you've done. That's more likely to be the problem rather than the software. Obviously, you do want to double check that you've got the right menu system on there. That would probably be the first thing I would check, to be honest. Just make sure I've got that, make sure the game's okay. Try a couple of games. If one's working, one's not, then you know there's an issue with that actual file. Other than that, like I said, the electricals inside the connections, make sure you've got each one connected to the right point. Make sure there's no breakages, and also those cuts that you need to make in the traces on the circuit board, make sure you've done the right ones and they've cut through correctly. If you've done that, then there should be no issues. So yeah, I hope that's helped with the process of what's involved in doing this. Like I said, the actual main part of the process is doing the soldering. Other than that, it's loading the file system on in the games. So that's it. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. It's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.